Harlem, 1934. 25 Ku Klux Klan members gathered in secret to plan their next terror attack. Then Bumpy Johnson walked through that door alone, unarmed, and ready to end their reign of fear in just 8 minutes. 12 men didn't walk out. What did Bumpy do that made the most powerful terrorists in America afraid to ever return to Harlem, to understand how it all led here? We go back to where it truly began. The loading dock door stood before him like the entrance to hell. Bumpy Johnson pressed his hand against the cold metal. 25 voices drifted through the gaps. Laughter. The easy kind that came from men who thought they were untouchable. The kind that died hard when they learned different. His breath came out in clouds. 28 degrees. February cold that made your bones ache. But Bumpy wasn't thinking about the cold. He was thinking about 8 hours ago. About small hands that would never grow warm again. 8 hours earlier, the warehouse on 143rd Street had been burning. Black smoke rising into the gray winter sky. Neighbors stood in clusters, wrapped in whatever coats they'd grabbed. Nobody talking, just watching another piece of Harlem burn. Bumpy pushed through the crowd. A firefighter tried to stop him. "Sir, you can't." Bumpy just looked at him. The firefighter stepped aside. The Johnson family lived on the 2nd floor. Thomas Johnson, a porter, his wife Sarah, who took in laundry, their daughter Grace, 7 years old, used to sit on the stoop reading books Bumpy brought her from the library. Smart kid. Asked questions about everything. When would things get better? Bumpy found them in what used to be the bedroom. The heat had collapsed the floorboards. Thomas had died trying to shield his family. It hadn't been enough. Grace's school book lay in the corner, untouched by flames. A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court. She'd been excited about it. Said she'd read it twice. Bumpy picked up the book. His hands didn't shake. They never did. But something in his chest felt like it was collapsing. Like those floorboards. The fire marshal was examining the point of origin. Accelerant, gasoline, poured under the door and lit. They didn't have a chance. Witnesses. 2 men in a truck, white men, left before the flames got high. Mrs. Patterson saw white hoods in the truck bed. The marshal's voice dropped. "I'll put it in my report. But you know nothing's going to happen. Some cops probably know who did this. Some probably were the ones who did it." Bumpy stood there looking at the ruins, at what was left of Grace's dreams. "You write your report. I'll do my job." He walked out carrying Grace's book, made a promise to a 7-year-old who'd never read another page. He'd make them pay, not just the men who lit the match. All of them. That was 8 hours ago. Now he stood at that warehouse door, listening to 25 men who didn't know their laughter was about to stop. But understanding this moment meant understanding what Harlem had become by February 1934. This wasn't just about one burned building. This was about a community under siege, a kingdom under attack. The Depression hit Black America like a sledgehammer. Unemployment in Harlem pushed 50%. Men who'd worked their whole lives stood in bread lines. Women scrubbed floors downtown, grateful for any work. Children went to bed hungry more nights than not. Into that desperation, the Klan saw opportunity. Most people thought they were just a Southern problem. Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia. But by the 1930s, they'd spread north. New York, Chicago, Detroit. Anywhere black folks migrated looking for freedom. The Klan followed with the same hate. In Harlem, they couldn't march openly, couldn't parade in white robes without getting torn apart. So they adapted, became shadows. Anonymous threats slipped under doors, go home or burn. Crosses burned on rooftops at 3 in the morning. Black businesses found windows smashed, inventory destroyed, no witnesses, no arrests. The NYPD did nothing. Worse than nothing. Some were Klan members themselves. Others just didn't care enough to stop it. 3 months of terror. 12 buildings burned, 5 dead, dozens injured. The Johnson family was just the latest casualty in a war nobody wanted to admit was happening. Harlem's leaders were paralyzed. Reverend Williams slept with a shotgun. Used to preach about turning the other cheek. Now he preached about defending the temple. Business owners hired armed guards. Parents walked children to school in groups, carrying kitchen knives, baseball bats, anything to feel less helpless. The Klan was winning through fear, through knowing they could strike anywhere and nobody would stop them. That white hoods meant immunity, but they forgot something. Every kingdom has a king, and Harlem's king didn't wear a crown. Ellsworth Raymond Bumpy Johnson was 28 in February. 1934, but he'd lived 3 lifetimes of hard. Born in South Carolina, moved to Harlem at 10 after his parents died in the 1918 flu. Orphaned in a city that didn't care for orphaned black boys. He learned early the world didn't give you anything. You took it or went without. Ran numbers for Dutch Schultz. Worked up from street runner to enforcer. Did 5 years in Sing Sing for assault at 22. Came out harder, smarter. By 1934, he ran his own operations. Numbers. Protection. Gambling houses. But Bumpy was different from other gangsters. Different from the Italians who saw Harlem as territory to exploit. Different from corrupt cops who saw it as a shakedown zone. Bumpy Johnson loved Harlem. Not romantic love. Hard love. The kind that understood this neighborhood was all most folks had. The only place black people could walk with their heads up, own businesses, raise families with dignity. Bumpy protected that dignity like it was sacred. When landlords tried evicting families who couldn't pay rent, Bumpy paid it, left envelopes with superintendents, keep them housed. When crooked cops shook down businesses, those cops got transferred. When outside gangs tried moving in, they went back in ambulance. People knew who Bumpy was, knew what he did, knew he wasn't a saint. But they also knew he tipped his hat to old ladies, gave kids money for ice cream, asked shop owners about their families. He wasn't just taking from the community. He was protecting it. I don't protect this neighborhood because they pay me, he told his lieutenant one night. I protect it because it's my home. Nobody burns my home. That philosophy made him different, made him dangerous to men in white hoods who thought terror was their weapon. They were about to learn Bumpy had been studying terror his whole life. The decision started that afternoon after the fire. He went to his office in Small's Paradise basement and made calls. Put out word. He needed information. Who was organizing these attacks? Where they were meeting? What came next? By evening, Marcus walked in, light-skinned enough to pass for white, which meant he could go places Bumpy couldn't. Hear things Bumpy couldn't hear. He'd been following a Klan member named William Hawkins for 3 days. Marcus looked tense. Mr. Johnson, I got something big. Bumpy gestured to a chair. Talk. Followed Hawkins today. He met with others, a lot of others, expensive cars. Connecticut, New Jersey, Pennsylvania plates. They went into that abandoned warehouse by the Harlem River, near the 145th Street Bridge. How many? 25. Counted twice. They were carrying wooden beams, gasoline cans, everyone armed. They're planning something big. Bumpy leaned back. 25 men. Warehouse far from busy streets. Close to escape routes. Gasoline and wood meant crosses. Multiple targets. You see who they were? Marcus pulled out a notebook. Got license plates. One car belongs to Robert Garrison, Grand Dragon for the Tri-State. Another's registered to a Bronx police captain. And Mr. Johnson. There was a car with congressional plates. Bumpy leaned forward. A congressman or senator, someone high up who's supposed to represent people. Instead, he's meeting with the Klan to plan terror attacks. The room went quiet. Only the muted jazz from upstairs where couples danced, where people tried forgetting the depression and the fear and the fires. Good work, Marcus. Bumpy counted out $200. Now forget everything you saw. You weren't there. Understand? Marcus took the money. He understood. Information traded hands. People forgot things. Men like Bumpy did what needed doing in the dark. After Marcus left, Bumpy's associates arrived. Illinois Gordon, his second. Junie Bird, his enforcer. 10%. Who ran numbers. Hard men who'd fought beside him for years. We got 30 good men, Illinois said. Say the word and we roll tonight. 25 Klan versus 30 of us. Bumpy shook his head. No. Bump. They're planning something. Probably targeting churches tomorrow. Multiple hits. We need to stop them tonight. We will, but not with 30 men. Then how many? 1. Silence. Illinois laughed nervously. You can't be serious. 25 armed Klansmen. They'll take you down before you blink. Bumpy walked to the window, looked at Harlem. His kingdom. If I bring 30 men, it's gang war. Cops respond. FBI might come. It becomes criminals. Fighting criminals. But if I go alone, it's different. 1 man against 25 terrorists. 1 black man walking into the lion's den and walking out while they don't. That's the message that spreads. That's what makes them afraid. Makes you dead is what it does. Bumpy turned, smiled that cold smile. Fear isn't about numbers. It's about the moment someone realizes they miscalculated. 25 men think they're invincible. Think hoods and guns make them gods. I'm going to show them they're just men. Mortal men. And mortal men bleed. Illinois tried once more. At least let me watch your back. No, if this goes wrong, Harlem needs you alive. To finish what I started. Bumpy walked back to his desk. If I'm not back by sunrise, you know what to do. They knew. Burn every Klan's safe house. Hunt every member. Start a war that wouldn't end. If Bumpy fell, Harlem would rise. But Bumpy didn't plan on falling. He spent 3 hours preparing. Not physically, he was always ready. 5 years in Sing Sing taught him to fight. Real fighting. Prison fighting where second place meant dead. An old inmate named Clarence had trained him. Former boxer who'd ended someone in Baltimore. What made Clarence dangerous wasn't strength. It was philosophy. You don't fight the body, Clarence said. The body takes punishment. You fight the mind, the fear. Make a man afraid, and he defeats himself. Clarence taught leverage. Vulnerable points, throat, eyes, knees. Places where small force destroyed ability to fight. Taught timing. Reading body language. Staying calm in chaos. Using environment as weapon. Most important, psychological warfare. Before you throw a punch, you've already won or lost up here. He'd tap his temple. Make them question themselves. Make them hesitate. That's where you strike. Bumpy had been his best student. Refined those lessons on the streets against Italian mobsters, Irish gangs, corrupt cops. Never lost, not because he was biggest or strongest, because violence was a language he spoke fluently. Now he sat visualizing. Marcus described the warehouse. 3 stories, basement meeting room, 1 entrance through loading dock, kerosene lamps for light, wooden beams, old machinery, things that could be weapons if you knew how to see them. He drew a mental map, memorized it, imagined moving through the space, where to stand, where to strike, how to create chaos that worked for him. For weapons, he chose carefully. His Colt stayed in the drawer. 6 bullets, 25 men. Even perfect shots left 19 armed men. No, instead, his straight razor, pearl handle, sharp enough to split hairs. Folded it into his vest pocket, took matches from the bar. That was it. Everything else he'd find in that warehouse. Illinois watched with anxiety. A razor and matches against 25 men. This is insane. Insanity is thinking I need more. I'm not going to shoot them. I'm going to terrify them. Make them understand no amount of guns or hoods will protect them from consequences. That's not a job for bullets. At 11:30, Bumpy stood to leave. Gray wool coat, black fedora. Looked at himself in the mirror. Looked like a man going to church, not someone about to commit violence against 25 terrorists. That was the point. They'd expect a thug, expect anger. Instead, they'd get someone who looked like their accountant. That mismatch would create confusion. Confusion created hesitation. Hesitation created death. 4 hours, he told Illinois. You know the plan. Illinois nodded. You're coming back. Bump. Not always, just so far. Bumpy smiled. But tonight, those 25 men have no idea what's walking through their door. By the time they figure it out, it'll be too late. He walked into the February night. 25 degrees. Breath in clouds. Harlem streets at 11:30 were mostly empty. Late shift workers. Couple stumbling from a bar. Police car rolling past. Cops giving him a look but not stopping. They knew who he was. Walking east. Harlem changed. Vibrant brownstones gave way to residential blocks. Then the industrial zone. Abandoned factories closed during Depression. Empty warehouses. The forgotten edge where neighborhood bled into no man's land. He passed the Johnson building. Stopped. Fire department had boarded the ground floor. You could still smell smoke. See char marks. A teddy bear sat on the stoop. Someone's memorial for Grace. Bumpy picked it up, looked at it, placed it back carefully, kept walking. 3 blocks later, he heard crying, soft sound from an alley beside a closed grocery. He stopped, listened, walked into the alley carefully, hand on the razor but not drawing it. A boy sat huddled against the wall, maybe 9, thin, shivering in a too small coat. Looked up when Bumpy approached, fear in his eyes, the fear every Harlem child wore lately. What are you doing out here, son? The boy wiped his eyes. Can't sleep. Keep having bad dreams about the fire. Keep thinking maybe they'll come for us next. Bumpy knelt down. What's your name? Raymond. You know who I am? The boy nodded. Bumpy Johnson. Mama says you're a bad man. Papa says you're the only one who keeps us safe. Bumpy smiled. Your papa's smart. Listen, Raymond, tomorrow morning, you'll sleep fine. No more bad dreams. No more fear. Because tonight, I'm making sure the people causing those fires learn a lesson they'll never forget. Understand? You're going to stop them. I'm going to end them. The boy's eyes went wide. Not with fear. With hope. Promise. Bumpy stood. I promise. Now get home before your mama worries. Raymond ran toward his building 3 doors down. Looked back once, waved, disappeared inside. That's what this was about. Not revenge. That boy being able to sleep. Grace's death meaning something. Harlem being a place where children could be children. Bumpy continued toward the river. The industrial zone stretched out. Empty. Dark. Cold. Perfect place for men to meet in secret. Perfect place for them to die in secret. He reached the warehouse at 11:40. 3-story brick building. Dark windows, graffiti on walls, structure leaning slightly like it was tired of standing. In the alley, 5 cars, expensive cars, Cadillac, 2 Buicks, Packard, Lincoln, the kind bankers and politicians drove. Shouldn't be in Harlem at this hour. Bumpy circled once. Connecticut plates on the Cadillac, New Jersey on the Packard. The Lincoln had government plates, congressional plates. Marcus was right. Someone important inside. The loading dock door was slightly open. Warm air drifted out. They had a fire going, keeping comfortable while planning others' death. Bumpy stood in shadows, 5 minutes, listening, waiting, letting his eyes adjust, letting his mind settle into that calm place Clarence taught, where fear couldn't reach because you'd already accepted what was coming. Voices inside. Laughter. Glasses clinking, celebrating something. Probably the Johnson fire, probably planning the next one. Feeling invincible in their robes and expensive cars and connections, about to learn invincibility was illusion. That power was temporary. That evil eventually met something it couldn't intimidate, couldn't threaten, couldn't destroy. Tonight evil was meeting Bumpy Johnson. He checked his watch. 11:45. Adjusted his fedora, straightened his coat. Hand on the door. Inside. Someone speaking. Commanding voice. Probably Robert Garrison, the Grand Dragon. Giving orders. Assigning targets. Deciding which churches would burn. Which families would die. Which children would end up like Grace. Bumpy pulled the door open. Stepped inside. 25 men in white robes turned. 25 faces under hoods. 25 voices went silent. In that silence, Bumpy smiled. Not the warm smile he'd given Raymond. The cold one. The one that didn't reach his eyes. The smile that said he knew exactly what was about to happen, and they didn't. Not yet. But they would. In about 8 minutes. Bumpy looked at those 25 faces. Thought about Grace reading on the stoop. Raymond crying in the alley. Every family in Harlem sleeping restlessly because of these men. Then he looked at the Grand Dragon at the table's head, mouth open in shock. About to speak. About to threaten. About to make his final mistake. "Good evening, gentlemen," Bumpy said quietly, voice carrying like a judge delivering sentence. "I believe we have some business to discuss." The Grand Dragon found his voice, started to speak, started to threaten, started reaching for his weapon. But Bumpy was already moving, already inside their space, already showing them what happened when you brought terror to his neighborhood, when you murdered his people, when you made children afraid to sleep. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. These men with their expensive cars and political connections and hoods full of hate were about to fall harder than they'd ever imagined. The basement fell silent like a funeral. 25 white hoods turned toward the door. 25 men who'd been laughing about burned buildings and dead families suddenly couldn't remember how to breathe. Bumpy Johnson stood in the doorway, still as a statue, letting them look, letting the fear build. Robert Garrison stood at the head of the table. The Grand Dragon, 52 years old, owner of 3 textile factories in Connecticut, respected businessman, deacon at his church, father of 4, and a man who organized terror campaigns across 3 states like other men organized board meetings. He recovered first, pulling himself up to full height. "Boy, you just made the Bumpy held up one hand." The gesture was so calm, so authoritative, that Garrison actually stopped talking. That silence stretched, became uncomfortable, became suffocating. Bumpy still hadn't moved from the doorway, just stood there, looking at them, looking at each face under each hood, Not with anger, with something colder. Recognition. Then he spoke. Not to Garrison, to a man standing 3 positions to the left. William Hawkins, 412 Maple Street, Stamford, Connecticut, wife Margaret, 2 sons, William Jr. and Robert. Both attend Greenwich Country Day School. The man called Hawkins went rigid. How did this man know his name? Know his address? Know his children's school? Bumpy's eyes moved to another man. Thomas Sullivan, Captain, 41st Precinct, Bronx, lives in Pelham Bay. Your daughter Catherine just got accepted to Barnard College. Congratulations. Captain Sullivan took a step backward. His hand moved toward his hip, toward his service weapon. Bumpy continued, eyes moving to the next man. Charles Morrison, Assistant District Attorney, Westchester County. Your wife Emily is pregnant with your 3rd child, due in April. Then another. James Patterson, Bank President, First National of Newark. You have a mistress in Manhattan, secretary named Dorothy. Your wife doesn't know. And one more. Senator Richard Hartwell, Connecticut. You voted for the anti-lynching bill last year in public. Here you are planning fires in private. Interesting contradiction. The room had gone from silent to something beyond silent. That place where everyone stops breathing at once. These men, who thought they were anonymous behind their hoods, who thought secret meetings in abandoned warehouses made them invisible, suddenly realized they'd been seen all along, known, studied, catalogued. Garrison found his voice again, but it had lost its authority. How do you know who you are? Bumpy took 3 steps into the room, slow, deliberate. Because I'm not stupid. Because when someone starts burning my neighborhood, I find out who's holding the matches, and I found out everything. Where you live, where you work, where your families sleep at night. He stopped walking. Let that sink in. Watch the implications spread across their faces like poison. I don't need to eliminate all of you. I just need you to go home and tell your wives and children what happened here tonight. Tell them what you tried to do. Tell them what it cost you. That was the moment something shifted in the room. These men had come here feeling powerful, feeling protected by numbers and weapons and the certainty that black men didn't fight back, that black men couldn't fight back, that the system would always protect white men in hoods over black families in their homes. Bumpy Johnson had just shown them that certainty was an illusion. And in that moment, fear walked into the room wearing their faces. Garrison tried to reassert control. He gestured to the men around him, to the weapons on their hips and under their robes. His voice came back stronger, feeding on the need to not look weak in front of his followers. There are 15 guns pointed at you right now. You think knowing our names protects you. You think you can just walk in here and threaten us. You're one man. We're 25. You do the mathematics, boy. Bumpy's expression didn't change. 22 guns. I count better than you. And you can stop calling me boy. My name is Bumpy Johnson. You might want to remember it, because it's going to be the last name a lot of your friends hear tonight. One of the younger men, couldn't have been more than 25, his voice shaking behind his hood, said, "Just shoot him. What are we waiting for?" Garrison nodded. You walked into the wrong room on the wrong night. Should have stayed in your neighborhood with your own kind. Funny, Bumpy said. A little girl said something similar this morning, before you burned her alive. The room froze again. Different freeze this time. Guilty freeze. Her name was Grace Johnson, 7 years old. Loved reading books. Was supposed to start 3rd grade next week. Bumpy's voice stayed calm. Flat, like he was reading a weather report. That made it worse somehow. Made it more terrifying. Someone in this room burned her building this morning. Poured gasoline under the door. Lit it. Listened to that family scream while they died. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. So I'm going to ask once, and only once. Who did it? Silence. 25 men suddenly very interested in their shoes, in the floor, in anything except meeting Bumpy's eyes. Nobody wants to claim credit, strange. You all seemed so proud about it an hour ago. I heard you laughing from outside. More silence. Then, from the back, a voice. Young. Shaking. It was me. And Donovan. We did it. It was just supposed to send a message. We didn't think. You didn't think what that the family was inside. That gasoline burns hot, that a 7-year-old girl would die screaming for her mother. The young man pulled off his hood, red-faced, tears already starting. Couldn't have been older than 23. I didn't. We didn't mean for it to be like that. We were just following orders. We were told to hit that building specifically. Make an example. Bumpy looked at him for a long moment. What's your name? David. David Murphy. You have children. David. A daughter. She's 6. What's her name? Annie. Bumpy nodded slowly. Then you understand what I'm going to do now. David Murphy went pale, took a step backward, bumped into the man behind him. Wait, please. You burned a child alive, and now you're going to learn what that feels like. That's when Garrison made his move, drew his pistol, pointed it at Bumpy's chest. Shoot him, all of you now. 22 men reached for their weapons. 22 hammers pulled back. 22 triggers squeezed. Click, 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 click. 22 empty clicks echoing in that basement like a death rattle. Bumpy smiled, finally smiled. Not the cold smile from before. Something worse. A smile of pure vindication. Of a plan coming together perfectly. You thought I walked in here unprepared. You thought I came into a room with 25 armed terrorists without insurance. Garrison pulled his trigger again. And again. Nothing. His face went from confident to confused to terrified in the space of 3 seconds. My associate Marcus visited here 3 hours ago. Climbed through that window. Bumpy pointed to the high window on the east wall. While you were all upstairs drinking and putting on your fancy robes. He was down here taking out every bullet from every gun. Took him 40 minutes. Very thorough young man. The room erupted, men fumbling with their weapons, opening chambers, finding nothing but empty spaces where bullets should be. Some pulled knives. Others grabbed wooden clubs they'd brought to break windows. One man picked up a length of pipe from the corner. Garrison's face twisted with rage. You want a fair fight? Fine. We'll beat you to death with our bare hands. Bumpy took off his fedora, set it carefully on a crate by the door, unbuttoned his coat, folded it, set it on top of the hat, rolled up his sleeves. Now we're even. 25 of you. 1 of me. No guns. Just hands and whatever we can find in this room. That's fair. Right. Rush him, Garrison screamed. All at once, he's just one man. But nobody moved, because something had changed in the room. These men had come here with the certainty of their guns, with the psychological safety of overwhelming force. And Bumpy had taken that away, had reduced this to what it really was. 25 men who'd probably never thrown a real punch in their lives, versus one man who looked like he'd been born fighting. The standoff lasted maybe 5 seconds. Then one of them, the biggest one, a man who stood 6'4" and probably weighed 250 pounds, decided to be the hero. Came at Bumpy with a roar, fists raised like he was going to demolish this uppity black man who dared invade their meeting. Bumpy didn't run, didn't dodge, just waited until the big man was close enough. Then he moved. Fast, faster than a man his size should move, stepped inside the big man's swing, drove his palm up into the throat, not hard enough to crush it completely, just hard enough to collapse the windpipe temporarily. The big man went down gasping, drowning on air, hands at his neck, eyes wide with panic. Lesson 1, Bumpy said calmly. Size doesn't matter when you can't breathe. That broke the paralysis. Suddenly everyone was moving, charging, yelling. 24 men rushing one. The way it should work. Overwhelming force should win. Numbers should triumph. But Bumpy had spent 5 years learning how to fight when outnumbered, how to create chaos that worked for him, how to turn a room into a weapon. He grabbed one of the kerosene lamps from the table, threw it against the wall. The glass shattered. Kerosene splashed across old wooden beams. The flame caught instantly. Fire bloomed up the wall, spreading fast across dry timber that hadn't seen water in years. The men closest to the fire stumbled backward. Bumpy moved into that space, grabbed the wooden cross from the corner. 6 feet of solid oak that these men had brought to burn in some black family's yard. Now it was his weapon. He swung it like a bat, caught one man across the knees. Bones cracked. The man went down screaming, swung it back the other way, connected with another man's ribs, used the momentum to spin, drove the pointed end into a third man's stomach. Not deep enough to penetrate organs, just deep enough to take him out of the fight. "This is your cross," Bumpy said between swings, "your symbol of terror. How's it feel having it used on you?" The room was filling with smoke now, the kerosene fire spreading up the walls, across the ceiling beams. Old dry wood catching fast. The heat was building. Men were coughing, stumbling, trying to fight through smoke that burned their eyes and lungs. But Bumpy had memorized this room's layout, knew where every support beam stood, every piece of machinery, every exit. He moved through the smoke like he could see through it, like he was part of it. A man came at him from the left. Bumpy didn't see him, but heard him, heard the footsteps, heard the breathing, swung the cross blind, felt it connect, heard the impact, heard the body fall. The heat was intense now, the fire climbing toward the upper floors, the smoke so thick you couldn't see 3 feet. Men were panicking, fighting each other in the confusion. Bumpy heard gunshots. The ones who'd brought their own ammunition were firing blind, hitting their own people, creating more chaos. Bumpy dropped the cross, too big for close quarters fighting in smoke. Pulled out his straight razor, the pearl handle cool in his palm despite the heat. Opened it. The blade caught the firelight, gleamed. A man stumbled into him in the smoke. Bumpy didn't think, just reacted. The razor opened the man's arm from elbow to wrist, not deep, not life-threatening, just enough to take him out of the fight, enough to send a message. Another man. This one had found his way to the door, was trying to escape. Bumpy couldn't let that happen. Not yet, not until the lesson was learned. He grabbed the man's collar, pulled him back into the smoke. The man swung wild, caught Bumpy across the cheek, drew blood. Bumpy felt the sting, felt the warmth of his own blood running down his face, felt something animal wake up inside him, something that had been sleeping, something that Clarence had taught him to control, but never to completely suppress. He drove his forehead into the man's nose, felt the cartilage crunch. The man stumbled backward. Bumpy followed, drove his knee into the man's groin. When he doubled over, Bumpy brought his elbow down on the back of the neck. The man collapsed. This was the part that would haunt Bumpy later, the part he'd see in his dreams. Not the necessity of it, not the justice of it, but how easy it was, how natural, how after the first few seconds, his body just took over. Muscle memory from Sing Sing, from street fights, from every time someone had tried to hurt him or his people. His body knew what to do, knew where to strike, knew how much force, knew how to turn men into obstacles and then eliminate those obstacles. The smoke was getting dangerous now, even Bumpy, who knew this room, was getting disoriented. The heat was becoming unbearable. He'd planned for this, knew the fire would get out of control, knew he had maybe 2 more minutes before this place became a death trap. But he wasn't done yet, because through the smoke, he could see Garrison, the Grand Dragon, the man who'd ordered all of this, who'd sent David Murphy and Donovan to burn the Johnson building, who'd drawn up the plans on that table for 8 churches, 8 more families like the Johnsons, 8 more graces. Garrison saw Bumpy coming, backed away, reached into his robe, pulled out another pistol, a smaller one, a backup piece. "I kept one loaded," Garrison said, his voice breaking. "I'm not stupid." He pulled the trigger. The shot was deafening in the enclosed space. The bullet hit Bumpy. Left shoulder, spun him halfway around. He felt the impact, felt the hot punch of lead tearing through muscle, felt his arm go numb. But he didn't go down, didn't even stumble, just turned back to Garrison with blood running down his arm and that same cold smile on his face. "That the best you got?" Garrison pulled the trigger again. Click. The gun had been a 2-shot Derringer. He'd just used both. That's when the door burst open. Marcus came through the smoke like an avenging angel, younger than Bumpy, faster. He crossed the room in 3 strides, hit Garrison with a flying tackle that took them both to the ground. The gun went skittering across the floor. "I got him!" Marcus yelled through the smoke. "I got him, Mr. Johnson." Bumpy stumbled over. His shoulder was screaming now, the adrenaline wearing off, the pain setting in. Marcus was on top of Garrison, pinning him down. Garrison was thrashing, trying to break free, screaming for help that wasn't coming. "You," Garrison stared at Marcus. "You were my informant. You worked for me. You were supposed to tell us about Johnson's operations." Marcus's face was hard. "I played you, fed you bad information for 3 months. Every tip I gave you was designed to make you comfortable, make you think you were safe, make you have this meeting in a place where Mr. Johnson could find you. You betrayed your own race. You betrayed the white." Marcus hit him, hard, closed fist to the jaw. "I'm not white, you fool. I'm light-skinned black. My grandmother was lynched in Georgia. My father was beaten in Mississippi. You thought I'd help you kill my own people. I was always with Harlem. Always with him." He nodded toward Bumpy. "You just saw what you wanted to see." Garrison spat blood. "Then you're both dead. You understand that. When word gets out about this, word is getting out," Bumpy said. He pulled out something from his coat pocket. A camera. Small Kodak Brownie. "Marcus took pictures of your meeting. Got all 25 faces. Got your maps. Got your plans. Got everything." Marcus stood up, pulled Garrison to his feet, shoved him toward the door. "Time to go. This place is coming down." The smoke was too thick now, the heat unbearable. They stumbled toward the exit. Bumpy grabbed his hat and coat. Marcus was pulling Garrison. Behind them, the ceiling began to collapse, beams falling, sparks flying. They burst out into the cold February air. The temperature shock was immediate. 28 degrees felt like ice after the inferno. Bumpy collapsed against the wall. His shoulder was bleeding badly now. Marcus ripped his own shirt, made a bandage, tied it tight. "You're hit bad, Mr. Johnson. I'll live. Check inside. See who else can walk out." Marcus went back to the door. Through the smoke, forms were emerging, men stumbling out, coughing, burned, beaten, bleeding. Some collapsed immediately on the frozen ground. Others crawled away from the building. Others just lay there, staring at the sky. In shock, Bumpy counted. 1, 2, 5, 8, 12. 12 men on the ground outside. All alive, all breathing, all broken but not dead. Marcus came back out. That's all I can find who are still conscious. Maybe 13 more inside. Some might be gone. Some might make it if the fire department gets here fast. Bumpy nodded. His vision was getting fuzzy. Blood loss, shock. The adrenaline completely gone now. But he couldn't pass out yet. Not yet. He had one more thing to do. He walked over to where 5 men had crawled together. They were in better shape than the others. Could stand if they had to. One was David Murphy, the young man who'd admitted to burning the Johnson building. One was Captain Sullivan, the crooked cop. One was the assistant DA. One was a factory owner from Newark. And one was the senator. "You 5, Bumpy said. His voice was getting weak. "Stand up." They struggled to their feet, standing in a line. Burned, beaten, terrified. "Take off your hoods." They hesitated. Bumpy pulled out the razor again. Even wounded, even barely standing. He was still more dangerous than any of them. They pulled off their hoods. 5 faces, white faces, bloody, scared, ashamed. "Marcus, take their picture." Marcus pulled out the camera, positioned them, made them face forward. Clicked the shutter. Once, twice, 3 times to make sure it took. "This photograph," Bumpy said, leaning against the wall because he couldn't stand without support anymore, "is going to every Klan chapter in America. 5 men, kneeling in front of one black man. Beaten, broken, humiliated. You're going to be famous. You're going to be the example of what happens when the Klan comes to Harlem." Senator Hartwell found some courage, some last desperate grab at dignity. "This will destroy us, our careers, our families, everything." "Good," Bumpy said simply. "Should have thought about that before you came here to plan burning churches. Before you decided black lives didn't matter. Before you put on those hoods and thought you were gods. You're not gods. You're just men. And men bleed. Men fall. Men fail." He nodded to Marcus. "Let them go. Let them crawl back to their cars. Let them drive home to their families. Let them explain the burns and the blood and the shame. Let them live with what happened here." The 5 men stumbled away toward the alley, toward their expensive cars that sat untouched while the warehouse burned behind them, toward lives that would never be the same. Marcus helped Bumpy sit down. "You need a doctor." "Later. First we need to make sure this place burns completely. Can't leave evidence that could be used against us." "Mr. Johnson, you've been shot." "I've been shot before. This ain't my first time bleeding. Just give me a minute." He sat there against the wall, watching the warehouse burn, watching the flames climb into the night sky. Behind him, sirens were starting. Fire trucks, police cars, coming too late to save the building, coming just in time to find the wounded Klansmen lying in the street. Marcus sat next to him. "We should go before they get here. 1 more minute. Just want to see it burn all the way." They sat there together. 2 men who'd just fought 25. 2 men who'd just changed the balance of power in Harlem. 2 men who were about to become legends, even though only one of them wanted to be. The warehouse roof collapsed with a crash. Sparks flew up into the night. The heat was visible even from 50 yards away. Everything inside was ash now. The maps, the plans, the crosses, the white robes. All of it burning. All of it turning to nothing. Bumpy finally stood, with Marcus's help. "Okay, let's go. We're done here." They walked away from the burning building, away from the approaching sirens, into the industrial shadows where 2 men could disappear, where legends were born and truth became myth. Behind them, the warehouse burned. 25 men had walked into that building feeling invincible. 12 had walked out broken. 5 had been photographed in their shame. 8 had run into the night, and the rest were still inside, learning too late that evil has consequences, that terror works both ways, that Harlem wasn't just a neighborhood you could attack without answering for it. But Bumpy's work wasn't finished. Not quite. As they walked into the darkness, he stopped, turned to Marcus. "There's one more man I need to see tonight. The senator. He needs to understand something those others don't." Marcus looked at him, at the blood soaking through the makeshift bandage, at the way Bumpy was barely standing. "You can barely walk. Mr. Johnson. Don't need to walk far. Just need him to listen. Just need him to understand what happens next." He looked back one more time at the burning warehouse, at the end of something, at the beginning of something else. "Because this isn't over," Bumpy said quietly. "This was just the first lesson. The next one comes tomorrow. The one after that comes the next day, until every single man who thinks he can terrorize my neighborhood learns that Harlem hits back. And when Harlem hits back, it doesn't stop until the threat is eliminated." Marcus nodded. "Where do we find the senator?" Bumpy smiled. That cold smile, even bleeding, even barely conscious, still dangerous, still calculating, still 3 steps ahead of everyone else. "I know exactly where he'll be, running home to his family, trying to forget what happened here. But I'm going to make sure he never forgets, never stops remembering, never stops looking over his shoulder for the rest of his life." They disappeared into the shadows, 2 figures moving through the industrial wasteland. Behind them, the sirens grew louder, the flames grew higher, and somewhere in that burning building, the Ku Klux Klan's dreams of terrorizing Harlem were turning to ash alongside everything else. They found Senator Hartwell 3 blocks away, hiding behind a dumpster, still in his burned robe, hands shaking. When he saw Bumpy emerge from the shadows, he tried to run. His legs gave out after 5 steps. Bumpy sat down on a crate across from him. Didn't speak at first. Just looked at this man who was supposed to represent people, who was supposed to make laws that protected citizens, who instead had spent his evening planning to burn churches and families. "You have power," Bumpy finally said. His voice was quiet, tired. "Real power. The kind that changes laws. You could use it to protect people, to build instead of destroy. But you chose hate." Senator Hartwell looked up, burns on his face, blood from his nose, but mostly shame. "I never thought." "That's your problem. You never thought about the families behind those addresses. Never thought about children like Grace Johnson, who just wanted to read books." Bumpy pulled out a photograph. Grace Johnson's school picture. Smiling, front teeth missing, hair in neat braids, eyes full of hope. He handed it to the senator. "That's the girl who died this morning, in the fire your organization planned. Take that picture. Put it on your desk in Washington. Look at it every single day. Remember what your hate costs." The senator took the photograph with shaking hands. Started crying. Not quiet tears. The loud, ugly sobs of a man whose worldview had just collapsed. "Tomorrow, you go back to Washington," Bumpy continued. "You introduce legislation, anti-terror laws, real ones. Make it illegal for organizations like the Klan to operate. Laws that prosecute people who burn families alive. They'll never pass. The Southern senators. Then make it your life's work. Because if you don't, that photograph gets mailed to every newspaper in America alongside the one Marcus took tonight. Your career ends. Your name becomes synonymous with terrorism." The senator nodded, kept nodding. "I'll do it, I swear. I'll make this right." You can't make this right. Grace is still dead. But you can make sure fewer children die in the future. That's the best you can hope for now. Marcus helped Bumpy walk away, leaving the senator crying in that alley with a dead girl's photograph crushing his soul. The fire trucks arrived too late. The warehouse was a skeleton. Firefighters found the men scattered around. 12 unconscious. 8 had fled. 5 sitting together. Silent. Waiting. Police came next. Questioned everyone. Got the same story. What happened here? Fire. Started accidentally. Who attacked you? A nobody. We did this to ourselves. Robert Garrison sat in the ambulance, half his face burned. Would scar permanently. The detective was frustrated. Mr. Garrison, we know you're Grand Dragon of the clan. We need to know who attacked you. Garrison looked at his burned hands, at the ruins. We did this to ourselves. It was an accident. That's the only story you're getting. The detective walked back to his captain. They looked at the scene. The burned building, the wounded men, the white robes. What do you want to do? The captain was quiet. Then, accidental fire. Trespassers in an abandoned building. No charges. Case closed. Whatever happened in that warehouse had punished these men in ways jail never could. Bumpy made it home at 3 in the morning. Marcus had patched his shoulder. The bullet had gone through clean. He washed blood off his hands in the sink, watched it swirl down the drain, red turning pink, turning clear. He sat by the window as sun came up over Harlem, watched the neighborhood wake, people heading to early shifts, the city starting another day. He didn't feel victorious, just tired. Bone-deep tired. Illinois came by at 6, saw the bandage, saw Bumpy's face, didn't ask questions, just poured 2 glasses of whiskey, sat down. You okay? Bumpy thought about Grace, who would never be okay, about the senator crying, about 25 men who'd learned hate has consequences, about a neighborhood that might sleep easier, but at what cost? Violence is never the answer, he finally said, but sometimes it's the only question they understand. 2 weeks later, the change was undeniable. No more burned buildings, no more threats, no more crosses. The Klan's presence in Harlem evaporated. Word spread to Mississippi. Boston, everywhere. 25 men, 1 man, 8 minutes. A lesson learned in blood and fire. Senator Hartwell kept his promise, introduced the Anti-Terrorism Organization Act of 1934. It didn't pass, but he kept fighting, spent his career pushing civil rights legislation, kept that photograph of Grace on his desk. The photograph Marcus took circulated underground. 5 men kneeling, beaten, broken. It showed up in black newspapers, churches, union halls, proof that white supremacy wasn't invincible, that terror could be answered. The Klan never recovered their northern credibility. That single photograph destroyed them more than 1,000 lawsuits. 30 years later, 1964, a young reporter interviewed Bumpy. He was 58 now, still sharp, still protecting Harlem. The civil rights movement was changing the world. Mr. Johnson, did you really walk into a Klan meeting alone? Bumpy looked out at Harlem, at children playing. Safe. Unafraid. It's true enough. The details don't matter as much as what it meant. Do you regret it? I regret it was necessary. I regret Grace Johnson had to die before justice happened. He paused. But do I regret doing it? No. Those children playing. They're playing because someone stood up 30 years ago and said enough. Was it worth the violence? You're asking the wrong question. They thought fear was their weapon. I showed them fear works both ways, that terror can be answered, that the most dangerous man is the one with nothing left to lose. He stood, walked to the window. The Klan thought they could terrorize Harlem because we were powerless. They forgot that powerless people are the most dangerous. Fear means nothing when you've already lost everything. The reporter left with his story. Bumpy watched the sun set over Harlem, thought about a 7-year-old girl who'd loved books and deserved better. He'd given her justice. Not perfect justice, not clean justice, but justice nonetheless. Below, children played, unafraid, free, because 30 years ago, one man walked into hell alone, because evil learned that Harlem wasn't a place you could terrorize without answer. Bumpy put on his hat, his coat, walked out into the Harlem night, still protecting, still the legend who'd shown the world that sometimes one man could make a difference, that sometimes justice came from unexpected places, that sometimes the only way to stop monsters was to become something they feared more. He disappeared into the shadows of 125th Street, into his kingdom, into the legend that would outlive him, into history.